parties or people who want to set up parties. And their argument was, we need more time, we need more help to make sure this is a genuine open democracy for the future, rather than just a choice between an autocratic regime on the one hand or Islamic parties on the other. And so I made a conscious decision to go and see the non-Islamic opposition to actually talk to them about what they want in the future of Egypt. And I think that is the right thing to do.
So allowing new groups
of
to
course,
flourish.
absolutely.
Okay then, let's move on to some domestic issues. We'll start with the video.
Hello Mr Cameron, my name's Neil Garrett and my question to you is this. You and your government seem to be rather intent on making an all-out assault on public services in this country and inflicting a level of cuts on the poor and vulnerable members of our society, all the while ignoring a rather large elephant in the room, which is the obscene profits that the financial sector are making and the complete lack of taxes that they're paying this country. So in that case, why are you letting the banking sector get away with this behaviour, and why are you inflicting this level of cuts and damage on our society, and particularly on the poor people in our society?
Well, let me answer Neil very directly. First of all, what he says about our assault on public services is just quite simply wrong. If you take the most important public service of all, the National Health Service, we are not cutting that service, we are increasing spending on that service. And that is the service that poor and vulnerable people depend on more than anything else. So first of all, I completely reject the premise of his question. The question he asked, why are we having to make cuts at all? Well, it was because of the complete and utter mess the economy was left in by the last Labour government, who left us with the biggest budget deficit anywhere in the developed world. People sometimes talk about the problems faced by Greece or by Portugal. Our budget deficit, when I became Prime Minister, was bigger than the one in Greece, bigger than the one in Portugal. It is Labour's mess that we're having to clear up, and that does mean making some spending reductions. Now, as for his question about taxing the banks, unlike the last Labour government that refused to act before other countries acted, we have introduced a bank levy that will raise over £10 billion in this Parliament. So under our arrangements with the banks will pay more in tax, they will do more lending, particularly to small businesses, and they will have a smaller bonus pool this year. Those are achievements that the last Labour government completely failed to achieve. Now, it is difficult making these spending reductions, and we are trying to do it in as fair a way as possible. And if you look at our budget and our spending round, it's actually the better off in our country who will pay more, both in cash terms and as a percentage of their income, in order to clean up the mess that we were left by Labour.
So on the premise of what Neil was saying about the banks, though, you feel that the banks are quote-unquote being punished enough. He was basically saying the banks should be punished. Are you saying that they are being punished enough?
I want them to pay more in tax. They will pay more in tax. But the point I make is this. We do need an economic recovery. And to get a recovery, you need banks to lend money. So if you have a choice in politics, you can go on and on and on about punishing the banks, or you can do what we've done, which is actually get more tax out of them, get more revenue out of them, so they will be paying more into the exchequer. And at the same time, we've got them lending more money to business. That's what we want.
Right, let's move on to our next question, a text one. Respected Prime Minister, what are the ways and methods your government is taking to reduce the unemployment rate for recent graduates, for both national and international graduates? This is a hot one because you've got so many people coming out of university and going, I don't have a job, I can't find a job.
Well, I feel for those people because it is extremely difficult at the moment, and we have seen, regrettably, a rise in unemployment. The most important thing we can do is get the economy growing. I mean, that is how we get jobs going, by making sure government is keeping the corporate taxes down, which we're doing. We're going to have the lowest corporate tax rate anywhere in the G7 to attract businesses in, to encourage business investment. That is the most important thing that we can do. And what's happening in Britain is a rebalancing of our economy. For years, we were too reliant on one industry, finance, in one corner of the country, the south of England. We need a rebalancing of the economy towards manufacturing, investment, exports, business growth across the country. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here in the Gulf this week. I'm determined to link Britain up to the fastest growing countries of the world, taking business investment and businesses to China, to India, here in the Gulf, to help our economy grow. That's the best thing we can do for graduates. The other thing is to make it easier for businesses to take people on. That is about simplifying taxes, simplifying regulation, encouraging businesses to grow, and that's exactly what we're doing.
So in answer to the question there, which was asking what's being done specifically, your argument is fix the economy, the jobs will follow.
Fix the economy, help business invest, take regulation off business, give businesses low tax rates. In the end, it is businesses that create jobs. Government can't create long-term jobs in the private sector. It is businesses that do that, and we've got to make the atmosphere for business better so they can expand and they can grow.
Okay then, let's move on. Next question. I think it's another text one. It is. This was, incidentally, the second most popular question because viewers would submit questions and then members of the public would vote. Why is marijuana illegal when alcohol and tobacco are more addictive and dangerous to our health, but we manage to control them? Would an education about drugs from a younger age be better?
Well, there's one bit of that question I agree with, which I think education about drugs is vital, and we should make sure that education programs are there in our schools, and we should make sure that they work. But I don't really accept the rest of the question. I think if you actually look at the sort of marijuana that is on sale today, it is actually incredibly damaging, very, very toxic, and leads to, in many cases, huge mental health problems. But I think the more fundamental reason for not making these drugs legal is that to make them legal would make them even more prevalent and would increase use levels even more than they are now. So I don't think it is the right answer. I think a combination of education and also treatment programs for drug addicts, I think those are the two most important planks of a proper anti-drug policy.
But the argument that it could be used as medicinal properties, that was another question we actually had, a person saying it's got proven medicinal properties, if used properly and regulated properly, could actually be quite helpful.
That is a matter for the science and medical authorities to determine, and they are free to make independent determinations about that. But the question here about whether illegal drugs should be made legal, my answer is no.
Okay then. I think we're moving back to some international questions now. Another video.
Hello Prime Minister, my question is this. What is the wisdom of aggressively pursuing Iran for its nuclear program, whilst Israel, which is the region's only rogue nuclear state, receives no comparable attention? And can you see how this double standard may constitute a destabilizing factor in the region?
It's a fair question, isn't it?
I make 2 points to Tim. First of all, we support the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and we believe that everyone should fulfill their obligations under that treaty. But I would make this point about Iran, which I think does make Iran a special case. I can't think of another country, actually, anywhere in the world, that has actually said it wants to obliterate one of its neighboring countries. It has said that about Israel. That seems to me to make it materially different from other countries. You know, to make that statement that it wants to wipe another country in its neighborhood off the map, and it is pursuing, to all intents and purposes, a nuclear weapon, I think makes it a special case. And that's why it's right to have the sanctions, to take a very tough approach, and to say to the Iranian government, there is another path for you. You can have civil nuclear power, you can have full engagement in the world community, but if you go down this path of nuclear weapons, you should expect to be cut off from the rest of the world, you should expect sanctions, and you should expect to be treated as a pariah.
But why should Iran have to declare that and Israel not? There's still so much ambiguity about Israel's nuclear weapons in the first place.
As I said, everyone should apply the Non-Proliferation Treaty. I think that is absolutely key. But I think there's a special case here with Iran, a country that is trying to get a nuclear weapon and that is saying that it believes in wiping another country off the map. I can't think of another country that has made that statement, and that's why I think this is a very special case. And it would lead to, if we are concerned about proliferation, it could lead to a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, which nobody wants to see.
Okay. Next question.
My question is this, Prime Minister. With the UN already having called for the US to investigate the torture that we now know for a fact to have taken place during the Iraq and Afghanistan invasions, will you act on any revelations of British involvement in torture, extraordinary rendition, or Frago 242?
Well, the short answer to that is yes, and I have already acted. There have been accusations, not that British people tortured anybody, but accusations of so-called complicity in torture. And that is why, when my government got in, we very quickly decided to settle all the outstanding cases against the British government and to deal with those, and then to set up, as I have set up, an independent inquiry by a respected judge, Justice Gibson, who's going to look into these accusations of complicity surrounding all the aspects of Guantanamo Bay, and we should act on the evidence. And I want Britain to clear any stain off its name in this area. I think that is extremely important. And it's important not just because we should be clear that torture is wrong and cannot be justified, but I also want to make sure that the security services in Britain, who do a very important job in keeping us safe, are not stuck in the courts pursuing legal actions, but are actually out there doing their work to keep us safe.
Okay, final international question, and this incidentally was the most popular question, and I think it actually ties in some of the early things we talked about the economy. If Britain is making financial cuts, why are we still fighting in Afghanistan? Shouldn't we be making to spend on wars, then why are people back home, to use this phrase, suffering from financial cuts?
Well, my argument would be that what we're doing in Afghanistan is about making Britain safe. I mean, we have to remember what Afghanistan was under the Taliban. It was a state that gave a home to Al-Qaeda and to terrorist training camps, and from those training camps citizens who went out and trained there, who have then committed atrocities and terrorist acts across the world, including in the UK. So the reason for being in Afghanistan, it's not some neo-colonial attempt. We want an Afghanistan that is able to take control of its own security and its own safety without the need for British troops, but that does not have terrorist training camps that threaten the UK. That is our aim. It's no more than that. We want Afghanistan to be run by the Afghans for the Afghans. That is, it's as simple as that.
So to answer that question, it's worth the money. It's worth it.
I'm afraid it is. It is obviously an expensive and difficult endeavour, and we have given a huge amount in terms of the lives of our soldiers who've been lost in Afghanistan. I'm acute sacrifices that our armed services make every day while they are there. I don't want them to be there one day longer than is necessary, and as soon as Afghanistan is capable of taking care of its own security with its own army, its own police force, then those British soldiers will come home.
We'll keep moving, Prime Minister, because I don't want us to run out of time. I'd like to get through all the questions. We're back to domestic questions now. This one with an international flavour as well. Would you please give your countrymen the chance to vote on whether or not we stay in the European Union? As our leader, you are obliged to present our countrymen's views. Give it a chance and put an end to this debate once and for all.
Well, again, I'm not sure I agree with the context of the question. I don't actually think if you hold a vote on these things, you necessarily put an end to the question once and for all. I have a very clear view, a view in which I put into my party's manifesto, which is we should be in the European Union because Britain needs to be in that group of nations. They're our most important trading partners. We need a say in the rules of the European Union, and our membership gives us that. But we want to change the European Union, and what we have done, and no British government has done this before, is we have passed an act through Parliament that says that if ever there is a treaty that passes power from Westminster to Brussels, the British people get a referendum guaranteed. That is a big change in our, if you like, way of dealing with our constitution. But I don't believe an in-out referendum is right, because I don't believe leaving the European Union would be in Britain's interest.
Okay then. Another video for you.
Hello, Mr. Cameron. We are two teenagers with plans to go to university. We want to know why only English students have to pay extortionate fees instead of all students from Wales and Scotland. We can see